Hey guys, how are you doing this Saturday? I hope you guys are having a fantastic Saturday afternoon. The sun is finally out here in Oklahoma City. So, welcome to our first ever live stream. And the idea is we're still trying to just kind of get used to all of our new equipment here. We got a camera, which you're watching me from. We got new software. We've got another, you can see I've got a microphone with the boom arms and all this other kind of crazy stuff. But we're really excited about doing this all. And the idea is, we've been going out in the community and doing seminars, and not all the time can people get out to the seminars. So we thought we'd try to start doing this on a weekly basis. We're thinking Saturday, probably Saturday mornings, like around 8 or 9 o'clock. If you guys have a preference, let me know in the comment section below. I would really appreciate it. And we try to get it at a time that is going to work best for most people that are out there. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about pet trusts. And I know that's kind of a funny topic, but that's kind of going to be the general idea of what we do every weekend on a Saturday. Is we're going to have some type of general seminar that we'll go over. And then as it progresses, you guys can ask us questions in the chat room. We're watching this chat room right now. And we'll try to get through as many of the questions as we can in the time that we have available. So I can't give you legal advice, but I can help you. Just general questions, and even if you're not sure whether I can answer or not, just go ahead and ask it. And maybe we start up a conversation offline in direct messages. So, like I said, today what we're going to do is talk about pet trusts. And I think when people hear this, they always start to laugh. In fact, I gave this exact seminar that I'm giving to you guys right now today to a bunch of attorneys about 6 months ago. And you probably know that as attorneys, we have to have continuing education. We have to have 12 hours of continuing education every year. So I got asked to participate in a continuing education class as an instructor, and I talked about pet trusts during that CLE. And I talked for about an hour and a half. I promise I won't go an hour and a half here. I think I've got it down to about 30 minutes for the presentation. And just depending on whether we have any people join us and whether there's any questions, we'll kind of see how much time we have. But like I said, I think people generally they laugh when I start talking about pet trust. But then the more that I start talking to people about it, it's kind of like, that's a really good idea. Because I think generally pet trusts probably have a bad name because we always hear about the Hollywood stories, right? This Hollywood celebrity or that Hollywood celebrity who left millions and millions of dollars to their dog or cat, and then the person who was put in charge of the money ends up running off with the money and buying a Ferrari or a condo in Hawaii or the Bahamas or something, and then the poor little pet gets stuck all by itself in a shelter or something. And that's exactly what you don't want to happen to your pet. So I think if you're a pet owner, we always dread what would happen when our pet finally passes away, right? Because a lot of times pets, they don't live very long, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. If you've got a smaller dog, you might be lucky to get 15 or more years. But we know that at some point, hopefully, we're going to outlive our pets. And so we always kind of dread that situation. But I think what people don't think about is what were to happen if something were to happen to you. And I'm not necessarily saying that you pass away, but what if you become incapacitated and you're no longer able to take care of your pet the way you are right now? So, like I said, you always hear crazy stories, I think, but the reality is that some people love their pets just as much as they love family, sometimes even more. And that's okay. If you love your pet like a child, then that's why we have pet trusts. And that's why you need to have one to take care of your pet and make sure that they do continue to receive the care that they should get. So we're not talking about millions of dollars here, like you hear in the Hollywood stories. All we're talking about is coming up with an amount of money and kind of a procedure and a playbook to take care of your pet if anything should happen to you. So the first thing you want to do is, just like you need to decide for your own trust, your revocable living trust, you need to have a successor trustee. For a pet trust, you need to do the same thing. You need to find somebody and think of somebody who is going to care for your dog with this exact same amount of love that you care for your animal right now, right? Dog, cat, furry friend, feathered friend, whatever it is. We all have our own vision of what our pet is, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of. So it should be someone who's going to give your pet the same amount of love that you give them every day. And the second thing, and that's where we come into the Hollywood stories, is how much money should you leave your pet? And, the best way I've been able to figure this out is to literally just do a calculation, is to figure out how much it costs for food, medicine, veterinary costs, toys, all those costs that go into taking care of your pet on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis, right? So what I've done is when I get with my clients is I literally just go through the calculation. So in our example here today, we are going to be talking about our pet dog named Winston. Okay. So my dog passed away about 2 years ago, and unfortunately, I haven't replaced him yet. I just haven't been able to. Um, but at the time, I was probably spending about $80 to $100 a month on dog food, depending on where I got it. He liked a very specific type of food, and sometimes it was on sale, sometimes it wasn't. So for our example here, I just came up with $110 a month, and then I multiplied it out by 12. So $110 times 12 months for the entire year, $1,320 in food. And then I kind of figured out, what are his vet bills? Now, when he was a puppy, we had to give him a lot of shots, as you do with puppies and babies. And then as he got older, unfortunately, he needed more medical care, and so the expenses kind of started to rise. So I just put kind of on an annual basis there that his vet bills are about $658 a year. And like I say, that may be more or less. If you think they're more than or less, then let me know in the comments below, and we'll kind of see where everybody is. But I just kind of figured out that's a general number that will kind of even out over the lifetime of the pet. The next thing you need to be concerned with is your heartworm medication and your tick and flea medication. And the last time I bought it, I believe we were spending about $54 a month. And sometimes we didn't always give it to them in the winter time, especially for the fleas and ticks, but we always had the heartworm, right? So, like I said, that came out to about $54 a month, or $648 a year. And then I could never get into a store, or out of a store, I should say, without buying my dog something. If I went into a pet store or a little boutique store when I was out of town, when you're traveling, you always see these little crazy dog boutique stores. So inevitably, I'd always get my dog something, some kind of toy, especially when I was on vacation. Whether it was a treat or a toy, there'd be something. So generally, I just kind of came up with a number about $50 a month. That could be more or less. But just for purposes here, so $600 a year is generally kind of what I bought in toys. And again, if you think that's too high, let me know in the comment section below, or maybe I wasn't spending enough, and let me know that too. So we just add up all these numbers, 1,320, 658, 648, 600, and we come up with $3,226 is what I kind of figured the annual cost to take care of my dog was. Like I said, I just put pen to paper, pencil to paper, and figured out what it was. So what I did in my situation is I figured, when I actually did this, I kind of calculated he probably is a bigger dog, that he probably only had 6 years left of life. And so in our example here, we're going to say that we're going to make sure that Winston is taken care of for at least 6 more years in case something were to happen to us right now. Okay. And this could be adjusted on a yearly basis. And if Winston passes away earlier than that, then obviously there'd be provisions on what to do with the money. But we're just trying to come up with a number that is enough or your caretaker to look over and to love on Winston. So that number came up to $19,356. And there is a reason actually that it is under $20,000. You'll notice that it's under 20,000. And I'll actually get into that here in a little bit when we start going over the actual law that we have here in Oklahoma. So remember that it's under $20,000. So our total cost came out to $19,356. So like I said earlier, one of the questions that kind of stumps people or really hits home is if something were to happen to you right now at this very moment, would somebody know to go take care of your animal, your pet at your house? Would they know that they need to go let them out to go to the restroom? Would they know that they need to be fed at 6 in the evening or 6 in the morning? Would they know that they need to give them their medicine for the day? So these are all kinds of questions that you need to really think about ahead of time so that if something were to happen, and like I said, it could just be that you're unfortunate enough to get in a car accident or, something happened where you're incapacitated for a little while. You want to have a plan in place to look after your loved pet. So a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, their next door neighbor's house burnt down, and the fire department was able to rescue the dog. The dog was inside the house, and the fire department was able to rescue the dog, and they literally revived the dog, which was incredible to hear. I didn't know they did that. But once they'd revived the dog, the owner wasn't around. They weren't at home at the time. And so the fire department needed to do something with the dog. And so they asked my friend if he would take care of the dog until the owner got back, or just generally watch after the dog. And the fireman was very blunt. He said, if you don't do this, if you or another neighbor doesn't watch after the dog, then we're going to have to send the dog to the Humane Society. And hopefully at that point the owner would be able to retrieve him. But you never know what's going to happen once you put a dog in the system and trying to find it. Last year, the ASPCA, the Animal Association, they did a study in 2019, I believe, and they figured out that every year about 500,000, 500,000 animals are put in shelters because something happens to their owners and there's nobody to take care of the animals. So think about that. That's 500,000 animals, dogs, cats, birds, whatever those pets are that that end up in shelters permanently because something happens to their pet owners and there's nobody to take care of them. And I think that most of us, and talking to some of my family that have dogs, I think they think that, just a family member is just going to step up and take care of their pet. But that's not always true. And maybe it is true, but you don't actually know the answer to that until you actually ask the question, right? So you have to ask your family, will you take care of my dog? Will you take care of Winston? You have to have those kind of provisions in place, because if you don't, you're just assuming, and the family may not know what to do. So and I guess a good example I can give is I've got a buddy who he absolutely loves animals. I mean, he will buy your dog treats every single day. He will buy it food. He'll do whatever that animal needs to keep that animal happy, even if it's not his dog or cat or whatever it is. But you ask him to actually take care of it on a long-term basis. And his answer is absolutely no. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want that responsibility. So kind of like grandkids, right? Grandparents like to take care of them, but they give them back at the end. And it's kind of the same thing with him. So unless you ask somebody whether they will take care of your animal, you're absolutely not going to know. You just can't assume that a family member is going to take the animal. And an even bigger assumption is assuming that your dog or cat or bird, whatever animal that you have, is going to go with that person, right? I mean, you've all seen it. You have a family member or maybe an electrician or somebody come over to your house and your dog just goes crazy. They become unleashed with that person, barking, and I mean, you're like, what's going on? They want to bite them. And then you have other people come over, and your dog or cat or whoever it is absolutely just smitten with the person that comes over and can't stop loving on them. So you just never know how your animal is going to react. And so the only way to actually find out is to introduce them to whoever that person is. So we always advise that if you're going to set up a pet trust, that you always introduce your animal to the other person. And maybe, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, you get together with that person and maybe even take them over to their house or wherever they live so that your animal is also accustomed to that environment as well. So that if anything were to happen to you, even if it's just you're in the hospital for a week or so, that your animal is completely comfortable going there with that person and in that new environment, and they're not stressed out. That's very, very important. So we always advise people to get their animal well acquainted. We also advise that people create what's called a pet dossier, literally a little booklet of questions, and we actually have put one together. And for our clients who do agree to have a pet trust or want to have a pet trust as part of their revocable trust, and I should say that when I do a pet trust, I do it as part of our revocable living trust package. So it's actually part of the living trust. There's has its own section that does nothing except for deal with the actual pet trust itself, but it's part of a bigger document. Okay. And in addition to that, we want our clients to fill out what's called a pet dossier. And I'll put a link in the comments below so you can download after our stream is over, so that you can download a copy of that and use it yourself. We'd love for you to have a copy of it. It's got great questions in there. What's your dog's name? Where does he like to sleep or she like to sleep? When do they eat? What kind of medications? All those really important questions that you do on a daily basis because they live with you, right? I mean, they're literally part of your family. But for somebody coming in, they might not know any of this. So you really need to know what their habits are, their food preferences, the medications that are taken, who their vet is, who their emergency vet is. So we'll put a copy of that in the comment section below. And now I kind of want to go over the law. I know that's kind of a boring part of all of this, but in Oklahoma, well, first I should say, I guess one of the reasons that courts and people kind of look down on pet trusts is because there's a potential for fraud, right? And then in trusts and estate law, there's something called the rule against perpetuities. And you don't need to know about it, but it just means there's a rule out there that requires trust to end at a certain point. Okay. And so there's kind of been some ambiguity in that. And then that coupled with people leaving millions of dollars or insane amount of monies to their animals has kind of led the courts to, I guess, in the past look down. Fortunately, in Oklahoma, I believe it was in 2010, we passed, and you can look this up. You can look at oscn.net and look under the statutes. It's Title 60 of Oklahoma statutes, Section 175.47. So it's Title 60, Section 175.47. And that's the first time that in Oklahoma there was actually, I'm sorry, that statute is the rule against perpetuities. The statute in Oklahoma having to deal with pet trusts is Title 60, Section 199. So it's Section 199 that actually creates, it's called the validity of a trust for the care of domestic or pet animals. So that was done in 2010, and that's the first time that we have had actually in the law in Oklahoma, a law that actually states you can have a pet trust for your pet. So like I said, I'll put a link, but let's look, I know you don't have it in front of you, but let's look at Section A. And right off the bat, the statute states that a pet trust is valid in Oklahoma, and just as important, it terminates on the death of the animal that it's covered. So I think this section, along with Section G later on at the bottom of that statute, states that the beneficiary of the trust shall include the caretaker for purposes of that rule against perpetuities that I told you about. And you don't need to know anything about it. You just need to know that it's out there. And this statute for the pet trust in Oklahoma fixes that and allows you to have a pet trust. Section B provides that a pet trust can be liberally construed to carry out the general intent of the grantor. So that means, just the general care. You don't have to be extremely specific. It's just the general care of your animal. You want somebody to love on your animal, right? And so that's what that allows for. The next section, actually the next two sections, C and D, talk about the trustor and the enforcer, and states that they cannot be the same person. And I'll I'll talk about this here in a little bit after we get through the statute. But what I like to have in my trust, my pet trust, is I like to have an enforcer, a trustee, and the actual caretaker. And we'll go through each one of these here in a little bit. And I think when you have all three of those, you really create a checks and balances to make sure the money's not squandered, and you make certain that your loved animal is taken care of the way you want them to be taken care of. Now, Section E talks about accountings. And remember earlier when I talked about, let me put it up real quick. When I talked about the amount of money that gets spent, it came out to 19,356 for 6 years of life. So the reason that's important is because of this Section E here, and it states that if the amount of money left is over $20,000, then you have to have annual accountings. So in other words, you have to be reporting annual accountings of the trust. And I think this is really important because if right for Winston, we were talking about 6 years of life and we came out to 19,320. But that total was, remember, the annual cost was 3,260. So if we were to talk about that on, let's say that Winston was going to live 10 more years, that when we created this trust, he was just a puppy. So in that case, we'd multiply by 10 years and we're looking at $32,226. So not that $19,000 is not a substantial amount of money, but $32,000, we're really starting to get into making a lot more money on just the initial investment that you're setting aside. And so in that case, there has to be accountings, and the person who's in charge of the money, the trustee, has to, and the enforcer, they really need to care for that money and make sure that that it's not squandered, that they invest it correctly, so that there's continued money throughout the life of Winston for his care. So I think that's really important, and I really like that Section E in there for that exact reason. So the next section, the last section, Section F, provides one of the biggest requirements of any trust, and that is that there must be a remainder beneficiary in order for the trust to terminate. So in this case, that remainder beneficiary is usually the caretaker. So now let's talk about what I like to put into my trust documents itself when we create a pet trust for somebody who comes into our office here in Oklahoma City. Just look at this real quick. Okay. So, like I said earlier, I really prefer to have a enforcer, a trustee, and the caretaker looking after Winston. So that's what I like to have, and I think it provides really nice checks and balances for everybody. First, who is the caretaker? The caretaker is the person who actually takes care of Winston on a daily basis for the rest of Winston's life. So in our example, let's say that Winston, that if something were to happen to you, you've already talked to Jennifer, and Jennifer and Winston and you have created a relationship, so that when something happens to you, Jennifer takes Winston into her care. So in this case, in our example, Jennifer would be the caretaker for Winston. And then there's the trustee. And the trustee is a completely separate individual. And this is the person who is actually in charge of the money. So whether it's the $32,000 that we talked about in the 10 years, or it's the smaller amount of money for the 20 years of 19,356, whichever number that one is, it ends up being, the trustee is the one that's going to be in charge of that money to make sure that it is put in the correct whether it's a bank account or investment CDs, whatever it is, so that there's money there to pay for the care of Winston. And so the trustee is charged with making certain that Jennifer has the money that she needs on a monthly basis, and they can work it out. Um, maybe the trustee gives Jennifer a check every quarter for money, for pet food and toys and stuff like that. Or maybe they do it on a monthly basis. Maybe they literally, I've seen it where the trustee will actually set up an account on Amazon and literally just pay for the food and have the food delivered to the caretaker's house, to Jennifer's house on a monthly basis. And then anytime there's medical bills, whatever there is, if Jennifer has to pay it out of her own pocket, then she turns those receipts over to the trustee for reimbursement. Then there's the enforcer, and the enforcer is the one who is really the big checks and balances, because their job is to make sure that the trustee is giving the money to Jennifer and that Jennifer is actually spending the money on Winston. Got it? So I really like this arrangement. I know it takes 3 people, and you have to find 3 people that you can trust, but I really like this arrangement because it really does protect your little furry friend, to make sure that they are cared for and that they're not left out in the cold, and that somebody doesn't take the money and go on vacation to Disneyland or Disney World or the Bahamas or someplace. So I really like having these checks and balances. So now let's talk about the mistakes people make with pet trusts. The first one is, we've already kind of talked about it, and that is putting way too much money into the pet trust. Like I said, I think that makes it really gives pet trusts a bad name. But if you actually do the calculations like we did here, I really, really think that you're going to be in good shape, because if you just put pencil to paper and come up with the numbers and really figure out what it costs on a regular basis to take care of Winston, then you're going to be way ahead of the game, and putting too much money is not going to be a problem. The second thing is providing vague or unenforceable provisions in there, not really saying how you want to take care of Winston. So in ours, like I said, I want our clients to fill out that pet dossier, and I'll put a copy in the comment section below, in the description section as well, for that pet dossier, so you guys can download it at whenever you have time to look at it. But I really want people to be as specific as possible. I mean, you have your dog probably on a schedule, or they have you on a schedule, so you need to be as specific as possible for the care of your animal. The third pitfall is, it goes along with the pet dossier, and that is just basically failing to keep information updated. Just like on your estate plan. I always tell my clients, I want you to come in every single year, or anytime there's a major change in your life, whether it's financially or personally, come in and see how that affects your estate plan. If we're talking about your estate plan, and all of a sudden a son or daughter has a child, your grandchild, then do we want to make provisions for that in your revocable trust? Or God forbid, one of your children passes away, then we probably need to restructure how your revocable trust is. So anytime there is a major life change, financial or personal, we want to look at your estate plan, and we also want to look at your pet trust. So, some of the things that could happen with a pet trust is your pet could pass away, and maybe we need to substitute the name of a new animal in there. Or maybe you buy another. Maybe you have 1 dog now, so now you have 2 dogs. So instead of putting 19,000 in there for 6 years, maybe we need to put money because we have a puppy now. So we need to cover the 6 years for the first animal that you have, and then maybe the next one lives for 12 years. So we need to figure out what that number is and put that number into the trust to make sure that both of them are covered if something were to happen to you. Let's see. The fourth mistake is not having a contingency plan. So just like in our revocable living trust and our power of attorneys and our pour over wills and our healthcare directives, healthcare power of attorneys, we have provisions in there of who is going to make those decisions if you can't, right? Or if your wife or husband can't, who's the next person in line? Well, if that next person in line can't make those decisions, either because they're no longer around, they've moved out of town, or they just don't want to do it, then who's the next person in line? So you have to have a contingency plan, just like we have a contingency plan in your estate plan. There needs to be a contingency plan for your pets as well. Okay, well, that's all we have for the pet trust today. If you got value, then I would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button to like this video, like this live stream. And if this is your first time here, then please hit the subscribe button as well so that you will get notices every time we we turn out a new video. And so, in case you didn't know, we like to put out new videos every Tuesday. And we used to call it 2-minute Tuesday, but I ended up going way over. And our videos are, I'll be honest, probably about 5 to 10 minutes now on a weekly basis. Sometimes we'll put out another video on Thursday or Friday, just kind of depending on what we have. Or something comes up in the estate planning world that we want to get that information to you as quickly as possible. And then we want to, like I said, we want to start doing these on a weekly basis, probably Saturday mornings around 8 or 9 a.m. Central Time, either one. But, let us know what works for you guys. And we're still trying to come up with a name. Coffee Time with Steve, estate planning coffee time. I don't know. But let us know kind of what you think. What would be a good time, and we'll just go from there. So we really appreciate you coming out and watching this, our first ever live stream. And like I said, if you got value today, please hit the like button below. And if it's your first time here, then please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button. It would go a lot for us. So thanks for watching. As always, have a great day, have a great weekend, and have an awesome day. We'll talk to you next time.